What's up, y'all? Welcome to another episode of Breakfast with Mark and Jen, where we help your Christian marriage thrive.
Yeah.
And today we are back because we know it's been a couple of weeks. We've been busy, have a lot going on. Life is happening to us in a good way.
Right.
So more on that at another time.
Yeah. Yeah.
But for now, we have another hot topic for y'all because today we are talking about no, you shouldn't get a divorce. His head is turned to the side already. First of all, we came up with the topic together, and secondly, we haven't even started talking. So, anyways, I guess I'll just jump right in because we have talked about divorce versus marriage on our platform before. And we mention it because we believe our mission is to help save as many marriages as possible. For those marriages that are destined to win, we're destined to help you win because sometimes you do feel like you're losing.
Right.
But why are we talking about no, you shouldn't get a divorce? Because some people actually get a divorce for reasons that are not biblical. So here's an example of no, you shouldn't get a divorce. So your spouse loses their job, and now you have to downsize. Maybe you can't eat out as much as you used to. Maybe you've got to trade in the car you're driving for a different type of car.
Right.
So your car note can be lower. Maybe you can't go on 4 vacations. I had a supervisor in grad school, Mark. She went on 4 vacations a year, 3 with her husband and kids, and then 1 they would do together.
Wow.
But he was a successful orthodontist. She was a social worker. There's not a ton of money in social work, but when your husband's an orthodontist, then it's just bonus money, basically.
Correct.
So he was a successful orthodontist. She was a social worker, so she was my supervisor. And maybe you're on her level right now. Maybe you were going on 4 vacations a year, and now you got to go on 1.
1 or 0.
Yeah, but you may say, well, okay, Jen, of course I know that's not a reason to get a divorce. There are people out here when they fall on hard times, statistics say that the numbers are pretty high for the amount of people who will get a divorce over finances.
Yes. Yes. They say it's the number one reason. I
We don't,
disagree.
yeah, we don't feel like that's true. We still feel that the number one reason is infidelity. But if statistics want to say that it's finance, even if it's not the number one, for them to say that it's number one means it's a high enough rate that people are actually getting divorced over finances. And that is not a biblical reason for a divorce. And it's just,
Yeah. It's not. It's not. And we're all about because we're talking to a Christian audience, and also for those that are not Christians, we can talk to you too. But as far as God is concerned, if you fall on hard times, then no, you shouldn't get a divorce. And there's a lot of people that, because marriage gets difficult, they want out. They feel like the only relief they can get is to actually leave the marriage and dissolve it, and so they get a divorce. But it doesn't necessarily solve their problems, and it's not necessarily what God wanted.
right.
It's just what he allowed you to do because he's giving you choice in that area.
Yeah.
Now, my thing that I've been, as you brought up this topic, because y'all know that when we talk about this stuff, hey, it's just inviting you into our conversations. We don't go over the content. We just pick a topic and let it fly. No, you shouldn't get a divorce because your spouse cheated on you.
Uh-oh. And see, I had something else to say about finances, but I guess we're going all the way into the deep end now.
I'm going to just put it out there. No, you shouldn't get a divorce because your spouse cheated on you.
Wow.
Now, I know when folks hear this, they're not going to like it.
Well, listen, it's about time, Mark, you feel the heat, because usually when I make these controversial comments, you just let me hang out there with my comment. And I mean, but it's usually actually only the ladies that eat me up.
Yeah.
The guys be like, preach.
Preach, Jen, preach. But you shouldn't get a divorce because your spouse cheated on you. I'm not saying that if you get a divorce because your spouse cheats on you, then you're wrong.
Right.
I'm saying you shouldn't get a divorce because they've cheated on you. You should get a divorce if they've cheated on you and you feel like there's no way we can go forward and we can make this work. And God is actually releasing you from that relationship because the trust cannot be repaired. And I think that sometimes we actually look at infidelity as a deal breaker.
Oh, yeah.
And it can be a deal breaker, but it's not automatically a deal breaker. And
Yeah.
there are a lot of marriages and a lot of couples that have survived infidelity because they feel like their marriage was hit very hard, the
Yeah.
trust was broken, but the trust in that area could be repaired.
Yeah.
So they went to the counseling, they
Yes.
put in the work, and they said, no, I shouldn't get divorced just because my spouse cheated on me. And that's not giving license
Right.
for people to abuse the marriage and
Right.
to step out on the marriage
Yes.
and to break the trust in the marriage.
Right.
What we're trying to say is we need to evaluate whether or not we should continue this marriage. And I think that evaluation
Yes.
is key when it comes to whether or not you should get a divorce because people are
Yes.
getting the divorces way too early, way too easily.
I agree, Mark, because when these types of issues arise, you want to look at the root.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes people think that when we say things or counselors say things such as look at the root before you just make a rash decision, that we're somehow saying that because of the root determines whether or not they should have cheated. They never should have cheated.
Mm-hmm.
We literally can say that because that's the reality. That's not ever the proper way to deal with your marital issues. But you want to look at the root because is the root that they just don't have respect for you and they're going to be out here and be for the streets no matter what you do? Or is the root that they have somehow failed to learn how to properly communicate it, some of their frustrations, some of their pain even.
Right.
And so they've just, unfortunately, because they never learned to communicate properly, they have, instead of coming to you as their spouse to
That's
say,
good.
this is where I'm hurting, or this is what frustrates me, or this is what I even need,
Mm-hmm.
they go to an outside source because there's two totally different scenarios there. If you have a spouse that's like, I'm gonna be for these streets regardless,
Right.
well, then that's
Then
different.
go be for those streets.
Right, because the root of that is you're selfish,
Mm-hmm.
you are reckless, and you're showing us that you have no remorse for your behavior.
Mm-hmm.
So that is different than someone who says, I actually feel lower than the scum of the earth.
Mm-hmm.
I feel bad that I've sinned against God. I feel bad that I've sinned against you. I want to fix it. I want to get to the root of it so that I don't do this again. I'll do whatever it takes so that we can rebuild the trust. That's a
Yep.
different scenario.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I say you have to get to the root. And it goes back to what you said, Mark, about, excuse me, going to a counselor.
Mm-hmm.
Because
We
when,
need to know why.
yeah, we do.
We need to know why. The why matters.
Yeah.
I think the why matters when it comes to infidelity because if the party that committed the wrong didn't really want to, or it was just an act
Yeah.
that came from a deeper issue, but they still want the marriage, we need to find out what's going wrong.
Yeah.
And if that can be repaired, then maybe the marriage has an opportunity to
Right.
survive and continue to thrive.
Absolutely.
So what you got?
Well, it's funny because going back to the financial piece real quick, I
Yeah.
just wanted to say I heard a preacher say something that I was like, that's actually pretty good. When he was talking about couples that get a divorce, like strictly over finance because their lifestyle has to change and this and that. And he said something that I'm like, it's really true. He said, how does that even make logical sense? He was like, if you were making, let's say, 100,000 and your spouse was making 100,000, but they got a pay cut and now they had to take just a job where they only make 25,000 and you're divorcing them because you're like, oh, now you're not pulling your weight. He's like, but isn't 125,000 still better than the 100 you're just going to make by yourself?
Right.
And then he said, or they lose their job, can't they just get another one? So I wanted to throw that in there that if you're like, oh, well, my spouse took a pay cut and now he's not pulling his weight or she's not pulling her weight, but isn't some money better than no money? Because now you don't have any of their paycheck if y'all are divorced. So how does
Yeah.
that make sense?
it doesn't make sense, and people get irrational when they're upset and
Yeah.
when they're in their feelings. And somebody's watching right now, and they're like, I would never divorce my spouse because they lost their job. Okay, you haven't been in that situation then yet, because what we're trying to say is that people are not thinking clearly. They're not discerning what God wants for their marriage, and they're being emotional,
Yep.
making an emotional decision. So
Hmm.
no, you shouldn't get married, or you shouldn't get a divorce for that.
No.
No.
And I got another one for you.
Let's go.
No, you shouldn't get a divorce because you and your spouse are struggling with infertility.
That's a good one. I like that one, Jen.
Your mom, Mark, told me a story years ago, of a couple that she knew. So this is a couple I've never met because this happened maybe in the 70s or 80s. But your mom knew of a couple where the wife left the husband because they weren't able to conceive. And when they, I guess, had everything examined by a doctor, they found out that he was the one that was infertile. This is a Christian couple. And she left because she said, well, I want kids, so I'm out of here. And your mom was like, did that lady never hear of adoption or foster care? Or maybe it's just not God's will that we raise children as much as I wanted it. And this is a more sensitive topic, but we've
Let's go.
seen throughout history where in royal families, women could be divorced by the king, or the king could take another wife if the woman was found to be infertile, almost as if your fertility or the ability to reproduce determines your value.
Yeah.
And so I want a man or a woman to know today, because infertility can happen on either or both ends, that your value and your spouse's value is not predicated on their ability to reproduce.
No.
God is the one who opens and closes wombs.
Right.
And whether he's telling you not now, or he's even just telling you
Not at
no,
all.
that is not a reason to get a divorce.
No. Because the sum total, or the reason for your marriage, does not solely rest on whether or not you produce children.
Right.
That's not the sole purpose. God did not say that marriage was for exclusively, it was
Right.
for producing children.
Right.
No, that's not what he said.
Right.
So you can't allow that to become the wedge that is driven in between you and your spouse, to the extent that now, because you're not producing in that area, you say, hey, we need to get a divorce.
Yeah.
You shouldn't, here's another touchy one.
Mm-hmm.
You shouldn't get a divorce because you lost a child.
Yikes.
We've heard of couples
That's good too.
that have brought children into the world, brought a child into the world, and somewhere along the lines, tragedy happens,
Yep.
and they lose that child
Yeah.
tragically. Your marriage shouldn't automatically dissolve
Yeah.
or sever because you lost a child.
Yeah.
And I've never been in that situation. I don't know what it feels like.
Right.
But it's not a knee jerk automatic reaction that should occur where you lose something so precious as a child, and it breaks down the union that God has created between you and your spouse. And what we're trying to get at here is that the marriage sits at the pinnacle of everything that happens between you and your spouse.
Yeah.
And whatever flows out of that shouldn't have the power to disintegrate the marriage that sits on top.
It's true.
So tragedy will happen.
Yeah.
Struggle will happen. Harm will happen.
Yeah.
Hurdles will come. But the marriage is so sacred to God.
Yeah.
It is so strong, it should be, that nothing should break it or cause it to dissolve because we don't know how to handle that situation.
That's a
Unless
good
God
one.
is saying it should be broken up.
Yeah, and that's a good one, Mark, because I remember interviewing a woman for a Christian magazine that I used to write for years ago. And she was being interviewed because she and her husband had at one time gotten divorced and then they got remarried because they both felt like they never divorced for a God ordained reason.
Right.
But she was telling me her story, and she said that what happened was their daughter didn't pass away, but their daughter went through tremendous illness. Like, I think she had childhood cancer. And she said the nurse told them from day one, I'm going to tell you all this not to be gloomy or say something dark, but because the reality is, statistically, even without losing a child, just when a child gets sick, like severely ill, the marriage tends to disintegrate and the stakes are very high. And we see a high rate of divorce as healthcare professionals among marriages whose children develop some sort of long-term illness. And she said they initially were like, listen, we got God, we're going to be good, we're fine. But she said over time, their marriage did break down because she was spending so much time at the hospital,
Yeah.
so much time in and out of the doctor's offices. Her husband was also working to help keep them above float and to keep insurance going. And so she said they didn't see each other much. And before you knew it, things broke down. And so I say all that to say, Mark, that when tragedy strikes, it's that much more imperative that couples have a way to have a healthy release. And she said, looking back on it now, she wishes they had gone to counseling during that period,
Yeah. Yeah.
because they were both tired, angry at God, frustrated at the situation, hopeless because they felt like we can't cure our daughter's cancer, only God can do that. So you feel like there's nothing you can do and you don't know if God's going to do it.
Yeah.
And so there's so many ranges of emotions. And if you're not talking to someone, you can't stay healthy.
No, you can't. And I think that what we're getting at is that marriage is just gonna go through some tough times, and you shouldn't just automatically default to divorce. Here's something that I was thinking about, Jen. If you're a husband out there, no, you shouldn't get a divorce just because your wife gains weight.
Oh, my Lord.
I'm gonna say it again.
Oh, my Lord.
No, you shouldn't get a divorce because your wife gained some weight.
Oh, boy. Help the people.
And I get it. I know that as men we're visual, and I know you did not marry her at that size. And I know you did not look into a crystal ball and see the future and know that this was coming.
Oh, Lord.
But you did not marry her for her size.
Right. You shouldn't have, at least. Because if you did, you're the one with the problem, not her.
Okay? And things happen. And your marriage needs to be deeper than that. That is way too shallow.
Yeah.
That means that your marriage is not built on anything deep. It's built on these shallow, frivolous things that will move, that will change.
Yes.
That will grow, that will go up, that will go down, that will fluctuate, that will vacillate. When your marriage is grounded in something that is as volatile as winds that blow through life, people's weight, people's physical appearance,
Yeah.
and all these things that will change,
Yeah.
then that means your marriage isn't solid. And I've
That's
got
right.
news for you. If you're thinking about divorcing your wife because her figure has changed, then your marriage is shallow. And you need to work on getting that thing deep.
Yes.
We've seen couples that, you know, the spouse goes through a sickness and everything changes. Their physical appearance
Yeah.
changes. Their ability to be as mobile, as vibrant, as engaging, all these things changes. Intimacy changes. And there's couples out there that hang in there because their marriage had deep roots.
Yeah.
And they're not about to be out here getting divorced
Yeah.
because life hit them, physical appearance changed.
Right.
What they really were hoping to have, it didn't turn out to be that way.
Exactly. Mark, that's a good one.
Listen.
So the same goes for ladies. Because because most ladies have a type, right? We're not known to be as visual as men, but we also have a type. But it's all of what you said is applied also to women.
Mm-hmm.
I think men do tend to probably be more shallow, though. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think. I mean, listen. I've even seen, on divorce court and those types of shows, I've seen where men are coming in and have come in and said that, she has put on way too much weight. And one time the judge said, and excuse me, but for the record, I also see here in your affidavit that y'all have 4 kids. I mean, most people, even if they get in good shape and remain healthy after having kids, most women are just not going to snap back to their original size. I'm not a big person. I have a small bone structure, but even I didn't snap back to my original. Once I
No.
had my first child and then my second child, so from my not being pregnant at all to having my first child, I jumped to one particular size.
Yeah.
After I had my second child, I've never even been that size.
Mm-mm.
So even though some people are like, oh, but Jen, that's not a big deal. You're still petite. But for the person who went
Right.
up like 2 or 3 sizes, because I was so thin,
Yeah.
it makes a big
It
deal.
makes a
I
big
had to throw
difference.
shoes away because remember my foot grew even
Yeah.
after both pregnancies. Each pregnancy, my foot went up a half a size. So the last thing I needed was a husband who was like, girl, your foot grew again. You need a nut. How's your foot getting so big? Like,
Yeah.
thankfully you weren't like that, but
No, but it's actually a problem because some marriages are suffering right now because the spouse wants their partner to actually change their appearance, but
yes.
their partner doesn't have it in them. Their partner doesn't work out as they should. They don't exercise. They don't eat right. They're not
Yeah.
disciplined in that area. And you can't see why in the world they can't be more disciplined
Yeah.
and get it together. And it's a problem in the marriage, and you're arguing all the time because she's like, "How do I look in this dress?" And you're like, "What kind of question is that? What do you mean? How do you look in that dress?" You don't know what to say. And
Wow.
so you start lying. You start making up stuff because
Not lying. This is a
you
Christian
you
channel.
start lying. You believe God, you love God, but when she asks you that question, how do I look in this dress? You're lying. You're
Wow.
straight lying
Wow.
because you feel like that's the only way you cannot cause a problem. But then she sees it in your eyes. She sees it in your eyes. She knows exactly what you're thinking. And then it causes an argument anyway.
Oh
And
God.
she's like, "Why aren't you just allowing me to live my life? Why can't I just live? You're always on me about my weight, about my shape." You guys need to get deep. You need to go deep in your marriage because there's too much pressure around these shallow things. And no, you shouldn't get a divorce because you're arguing every week
Oh Lord.
about these shallow issues.
That's a good one
I,
though.
I'm listen, this is exactly what's happening in these streets.
Yeah.
This is what couples are arguing about. This is what is causing big problems. And then it actually snowballs into a greater issue and people get divorced.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, you're right. Because sometimes if you look at why you and your spouse are arguing all the time, you look at why you wanted to get a divorce, if you start to scale it all the way back and pull back all the layers, you'll see that it was probably did start as something small enough that you should have been able to, even if you need a third party to help you, you should have been able to talk through it and move on and not
yeah,
turn it into this big federal case and now it becomes a divorce proceeding.
yeah, yeah. No, you shouldn't get a divorce
Oh Lord, he's got a lot, y'all.
because you having issues with his mother-in-law.
With you mean his mother? Oh, you're having issues
Issues
with
with your
right. I
mother-in-law.
was about to say that's his
Yeah,
mom.
yeah, with your mother-in-law. I got, I was gonna say something else, but I quickly changed it,
Oh, okay.
and that's why it came out like
Y'all,
that
Mark is just full of the
because I have
topics today.
so many things in my head,
Well, maybe we have to do a part
and I'm
two.
like, which one do I say, and is this one gonna cause a problem? And what I was gonna say would have caused a problem.
Okay, well then,
So I quickly changed it. But no, you shouldn't get a divorce because you can't get along with your mother-in-law.
now that's a big one, and that is a tough one because I have seen marriages break down over in-laws. That's why in our course we talk about handling and how to deal with outsiders, and we give you tools. And when none of the tools includes a divorce, but we won't give you those tools because you can order the course. That's just a sidebar.
I mean, there's a couple right now seriously considering dissolving the whole thing just because you're arguing so much, you can't get along with your mother-in-law, and you feel like, you know what? I'll just leave this situation.
Yeah.
And you don't realize that you're throwing away the blessing that God has given you just because someone else is robbing you of the joy that you have. And I think sometimes we don't cherish what we have because it's surrounded by so much dirt, so many issues. It's like a diamond that's buried deep beneath the soil. You have to dig it out. You have to brush off the dirt. You have to clean it up in order to really see how beautiful it is. And we want marriage to be ready made. We want it to be perfect.
Yeah.
But it's not. You may have to work through mother in law issues.
Yeah. And the Bible talks about cleaving, meaning you pull to your spouse.
Yeah.
So the spouse who has the parent that is causing a problem also needs to be honest enough, no matter how much you may love your parent, if you know your parent is the one causing the issue, you have to be strong enough to speak to your parent about
Right.
the issues that they're causing. And then if it's not getting resolved, you have to be strong enough, since it's your parent, you have to be strong enough to pull away even more. You may have thought that you pulled away, but you have to pull away even more so that you don't lose your marriage over your parent. Because once you get married, your spouse comes before your parent.
Yeah. Absolutely.
The only person that ever comes before your spouse is Jesus Christ. And he's God, but you know what I mean. The only being, the only entity that ever comes before your spouse is God, literally.
Yeah.
Anything after God, if you're married, should always be your spouse next. Not your children, not your parents, not your job. I mean, nothing should come before your spouse if it's not God.
Yeah.
And so I think some people, Mark, struggle because, oh, I love my mom, I love my dad. They don't mean harm. You can say that all you want, but if they're actually causing harm, you need to make some changes
Yeah.
and not lose your purpose partner and your destiny helper over
Yeah.
the person that God intended to bring you into this world, but not to be your forever friend and
Yeah.
best friend. That's what your spouse is for.
That's what your spouse is for. That's what your spouse is for. So you got any more?
No, I think you've,
Ooh, I got a whole laundry
I
list.
th-
But we're gonna stop it there. I have a bunch.
well, this sounds like it could potentially be a part two, y'all.
Yeah,
We'll see.
it could be. But I think this was a good one.
It's
I
absolutely
think
a
this was
good
a good
one.
one. The intent of this one was really to hit something that you're thinking about, something that's possibly going on right now, and you're like, yeah, why am I actually thinking about divorce because of that? And we want you to go through the process, do whatever you have to do, follow the leading of the Lord,
Yes.
so that you can make it through this season in your marriage. So listen, we're gonna get up out of here. Grab the Cleave course. It's a great course, and we know that it will bless your marriage. The link is in the description below. So go ahead and click that, and we want your marriage to be successful and to thrive. So this has been another episode of Breakfast with Mark and Jen, and we will catch you next time. Until then, peace out.